you can implement to really tie all the dots together in what you're doing. So the overall goal for today's workshop is essentially to set you up for success. We want to ensure that you're going to be designing products that actually meet the user's needs that you're designing for. And your current status here is that you were onboarded yesterday, I believe, by Barbara and the lovely team. You started probably in your teams to think of some potential solutions based on the use cases that you've been provided. So now it's perfect timing for some user-centered design training. And as I've mentioned, we're going to give you a very high level overview of the topic today. And we're going to finish by providing you with some tools that you can actually then use to really start working on your ideas and ensure that they're meeting that end user need. It will also be complemented by the sessions coming up over the next 2 days. So everything you learn today will nicely follow you throughout the next 2 sessions you have with the other innovation consultants. So tomorrow you've got a session on prototyping with my lovely colleague Verena, and then the next day you have one on business modeling with the awesome Eric. So you're going to have all the tools you need to really be prepared for those final pitches next week. So yeah, I've got high hopes for you all, and I'm really excited to take you through today's content. So before we start, I would like to open up the floor to you via the chat. Don't worry, no one has to speak. And I would like you to answer this question. So, based on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being that you've never heard of it, and 10 being that you're an absolute expert, who has heard of user-centered design? So in the chat, I'd just like you to quickly take 20 seconds to answer that question. So 1 means you've never heard of user-centered design, 10 means you're an expert, and then anything in between means you know maybe a little bit about it. Let's give it a couple seconds and we'll get a nice overview. Oh, I see lots of people in the chat, which is amazing. Perfect. Okay, let's take a look. Okay, so we have people who have never heard of it. We have quite a few in the middle. We have an 8. That's impressive. So we've got someone whoever has. Oh no, that's Barbara. That doesn't count. Barbara, you're delivering the hackathon. I'm like, whoever has Barbara in their team is lucky. Barbara's delivering the hackathon. Let's have a look. We've got 6, 4, 3. Yep. Okay. Nice. Oh, a 9 from Danielle. So whoever has Danielle, you guys better use her knowledge here. Perfect. We've got some 5s, some 3s. Brilliant. So the reason I did that, as I'm sure you can assume, is to try and gauge the level of knowledge everybody has here. And we only have an hour today. I'm not sure we'll even take the full hour because I want to give you time in your teams to really go back and work on everything I'm going to teach you. So I'm going to try and cover the basics so that we can really meet the needs of people in the room who don't have a lot of knowledge. And for any of you who already have a lot of knowledge, maybe as I'm going, try to already think of some of the techniques you're going to implement throughout the next few days based on your own knowledge and how you can really help your team. Please also interject via the chat or unmute yourself and put some points across. As I said, we'd really love to get your interaction here, and maybe you've got some kind of personal experiences that you can share as well. Okay, so I think it's time that we dive right in. Let's get going. And let's start off by first of all looking at what is user-centered design. So user-centered design can be summed up very nicely by these 4 little icons. It's essentially an iterative design process that helps you to build empathy with the people you're actually designing for. It's all about focusing on users and their needs in each phase of the design process. And you constantly are building ideas and generating prototypes in order to go through each of your research phases and to continually iterate and design and build upon them. You're constantly repeating the process so that you can ensure your end product is really meeting the needs of your user. And it basically means you're going to launch something on the market that people are actually going to buy. So it's a very important process. And, it's something that often as designers, you're always thinking how you can make the solution better for the end user. And a picture that shows really nicely what we mean by user-centered design is this one right here. Now, I'm sure we've all experienced this situation. For example, maybe you go to the website of a particular brand and you're looking to find a particular piece of information. And then you find yourself 10 minutes later, still on the website, still trying to find the button with the information on it that you're looking for. A box comes up and it tells you need to enter your date of birth and your email address, and you're like, what is going on? I just need this simple piece of information. That's an amazing example of when the needs of the user are not being met and the design of the product is not what the user is looking for. And this picture here sums it up perfectly. The designers created a path that the user doesn't take. The user wants to get to their destination quicker, so they cut through the path. And this kind of thing happens quite a lot when a digital product isn't designed around a user's needs, but it's instead built around what maybe the stakeholders think the user needs or what the business wants. And that's where user-centered design really comes into play. It's always about putting the user first. And it means that you have to also test a lot in order to do that. And you have to basically continue to test throughout the whole design process to make sure that everything you're doing is going to meet that end user need. And that means you have to involve real people. So, we're going to take you through some steps today to really help you through that process. And I'm going to go through it on a kind of one by one step process. And so you might be thinking, okay, that's great, Michaela, put the user first. But, why should we waste all this time and money on this approach when we could just start thinking of the solution right now and get it to the market quicker? Well, there's three kind of key reasons that user-centered design is a better way to go. And this actually comes from David Benyon, who is a professor with over 25 years of experience. And he has three key reasons, and he's validated these a lot over the years. When you conduct user-centered design, you can actually increase your sales and actually lower your costs, for example, in customer service, because you're actually building something that your users are going to want, and it's where their expectations and requirements are going to be met. So as a result, you're selling more and you're reducing the need for customers to complain or to ask for support from your customer service team, for example. So that's one reason. Second of all, by focusing on the users of your product, you can actually really understand the different cultures and human values of your users. And this is a really nice way towards creating more sustainable businesses. And it really helps you to understand on a mass level the users that you're designing for and all the different cultural and values that they have. And then lastly, it actually leads to safer products. And you might be thinking that's maybe a bit far fetched, but it's actually very true. When you're building something that involves a lot of technology, there is a huge human error element taken away. If you build constantly testing it and making it meet the user's needs, it basically means there's going to be less human error and that you are going to build safer products as a result. So now you know a bit more about why it matters and what it actually is. Let's actually look at the process itself and what this looks like. And it can be essentially summed up into four key steps. Now, there's loads of diagrams out there about user-centered design and the process involved. And if you go on Google, if you go on anything, you'll see 50 different types of diagrams come up. But for us here at Pioneers, we like this really simple and high-level overview because it just really nicely shows you the process. And as I said already, user-centered design is always about testing and going back through the process. So that's why you see a lot of arrows on this diagram, because once you go to the next phase, it's actually always about going back a phase to make sure that what you're doing is actually following you through the full journey. Now, the first part of the user-centered design process is all about understanding the use context and your user's needs. And in addition to that, it's about understanding the business requirements. So you're trying to solve a problem for your customers, but at the same time, you're trying to make sure that the problem you're solving is also required by your business needs. So, it's a lot of different stakeholders involved here, and it's ensuring that everything aligns. And once you've done your research on your customer, you understand the needs of them and the context, you can then go in to actually start building solutions and rough ideas for how you can solve the problem that they're facing. And at this point, it's then time to really start testing what you've designed. And that's where you can really sit with your users and get continuous feedback to check that what you're creating is actually what is going to solve their end problem. And as I've said, this is really about repeating a lot throughout the process. So once you've designed some ideas, you really need to prototype and test, and then go back and design again, and so on and so on. You're constantly evolving and testing. And then once you've finally finished your testing, which sometimes is really never because you really should always be testing, you can actually then deliver your product out onto the market and launch it. And at this point, you might be thinking, okay, we've finished user-centered design, our product's out there, we're good to go. That's wrong. You need to constantly also go back and continue to test it, because as we've seen from this year alone, consumer needs are constantly changing. It's a never-ending game, and so you've got to keep up with those consumer needs and continue to keep evolving your product for them as well. So that's a very nice high-level overview of the process. I'm now going to take you through each step in a bit of detail, and we'll finish the workshop today with some tools that you can actually take away as a team and start to use to really build solutions to the use cases you've been given that are actually very user-centric. But before I do that, I'm going to open the floor to the chat. Let me just check. Has anyone got any initial questions on anything? Or does anyone who has some expert knowledge want to input anything from their side? I'll give you 10 seconds to do that. And in that 10 seconds, it means I can also grab some water. Perfect. Yeah, I can tell it's an early morning for everyone. It's for me too, so don't worry. I know that it's hard sometimes to. Oh, I see a message coming in. User-centered design versus customer-centered design. Yes, very good question. There's a lot of terminology thrown around about this particular process, if you like. And actually, design thinking and user-centered design are often confused as well. But the main difference between design thinking and user-centered design is that user-centered design focuses on interface solutions. Sorry, I didn't say that correct. So user-centered design is much more focused on a product that has a user interface, whereas design thinking is much more open and can be used for everything. And if I'm honest, user-centered versus customer-centered is just a fancy way of distinguishing between that interface piece versus just designing for a customer problem. And obviously, in your case, you've got a lot of data. You're going to have to come up with technical solutions. So that's why we're going down the user-centered design route today. But yeah, there is a lot of terminology out there. So if you have any questions on any of the terminology, feel free to type in the chat. Does that help, Kieran? I hope it does. I can't see any cameras on my screen.
Yes,
so.
it helps a lot.
Oh, sorry, I can't hear you very well.
Yeah, it helps me a lot. Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah,
Nice.
you clarified my doubt as well. Michael.
Oh, okay.
Hello.
Sorry. Hello? Yeah?
Yeah. You clarified my doubt. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Awesome.
That's
Thanks,
a very
Kieran.
good presentation as well.
Oh, thank you.
Yes.
Awesome. Well, thank you for speaking up. It's nice to hear a fellow voice. So welcome. Thank you. Awesome. So yeah, there's a lot of confusing buzzwords out there, guys, but don't worry. We're going to help clear that up today. And we're going to focus, as I said, on that user interface piece of design. So yeah, let's dive right in. So the first phase, research. At this point of the journey, as I've mentioned, it's all about understanding the user and the problem that they're facing. And at this point, there's three key questions you need to ask. So, who are you actually designing for? Who's your user? What problem do these users have? And what is the context of this problem? And in order to properly understand your problem, you need to create what's called a problem statement. There's a lot of ways you can do that, but at Pioneers, we have a very handy tool that we use, and I'm going to share with you. And it really helps you to lay out the problem in a team and to really arrive at that final problem statement, which you can then work on to solve solutions for. And that's the first phase of user-centered design. It's about creating that problem and doing the research on it to validate your assumptions, essentially. And during this phase, you should always be asking, when do the users have this problem that you're talking about? What are the consequences of the problem? And, what benefits would there be if the problem in question was actually solved? And that's a really important point and something that we've integrated into our tool, which I'm going to share with you now. But the key point to note here is it's all about sitting down as a team, thinking about the problems your users face, and then arriving at that final problem statement. so you can then go into the next phase of research and check with your users if this is actually a real problem and validate it and do some different types of research. I'm going to share that with you in a second. First of all, here is a magic tool, and this is called a problem description canvas. And what this really helps you to do is to help you reframe the problem as a team and arrive at that final problem statement. So first of all, with this canvas, you start at the top. You start with the top 4 boxes. So who, what, when, and why. And this basically serves as a really nice solid foundation to the problem deep dive. And in the problem deep dive, you're essentially looking at 4 key themes: the status quo, the target group and challenges, the offers on the market, and the advantages of solving the problem. Now, I'm not going to sit and read this all out to you because I'm aware you can all read, and you're actually going to get given this tool today as well. But I just wanted to really quickly show you it as a great way as a team to come together and arrive at your final problem you're trying to solve. And when it comes to the final problem you're trying to solve, it should be just 1 to 3 sentences of a statement that is very simple and actionable. So I can share a very quick example of a potential problem statement. Imagine I am a customer service manager in a call center, and I'm noticing that over the last 3 months that our customer service score is decreasing. And I'm like, okay, what's going on here? Why is this happening? This is a problem, obviously, that our users are facing if they're giving us really bad feedback. So my problem statement would be something like, we've observed that over the last 3 months, our customer service ratings have been dropping. We've realized that the 2 key reasons customers are giving us low scores are because we have a slow response rate and we have a slow return rate, i.e. refund rate. And so how might we, as a customer service team, respond quicker and process refunds quicker in order to increase our customer service score? So that is essentially your problem statement. And it's all about thinking about, okay, what is the problem here and how can we maybe reframe it as a question? So how might we? And that's actually a whole other topic in itself, how might we questions. But for the case of time today, I'm not going to go into deeply to that. I just want to task you as a team to arrive at a final problem statement that is essentially 1 to 3 questions that really nicely outlines your problem. After you've then got that problem statement, it's time to check that it's actually true. And that's where you need to do in-depth research. And this is a really important part of user-centered design. And when it comes to research, there's lots of different things you can do. There's primary research and secondary research, and also a lot of different other types out there as well. But these on the slide are some of the main ways you can do research. And what you're trying to do during this phase is actually really on a deeper level understand the user and to make sure that that problem you've identified is actually something that is really a problem. You're getting to that root cause of the problem. And in the case of you taking part in this hackathon, you have quite a tight timeline involved. So from our perspective, we would really recommend that you maybe only focus on 1 or 2 areas of research that you can actually achieve in such a short time. So we would say that would be user interviews and also online research. So, looking at university papers, internal data from the data you're obviously going to be provided throughout the hackathon, as well as things like government data and any other useful scientific data you can get hold of. And these 2 types of research will give you a very nice, strong basis for understanding your users. And what we actually want to do today is share some top tips with you about this research phase. And that is going to be specific to user interviews, because we are going to task you with actually going to do some user interviews and utilize your networks to really try and sit down with some potential users and understand their needs and get to the root cause of that problem. And so when it comes to user interviews, we always like to share these really important questions we think you should ask. And what's really important during this research phase is that you as a team should not just automatically be assuming things and jumping to conclusions. Your role here is to fully understand the landscape around your users, around the problem, and to really be open-minded about it. So you should always be asking why, and you should never be being biased and actually just automatically assuming things. And so these questions are a really great way to make sure that you don't do that. And they are things like when you ask your user what's the hardest part about the problem for them, what have they maybe done, if anything, already to solve the problem, and what maybe do they not love about the products and solutions that they've tried already to solve the problem. And by asking these questions, you can really understand the user, understand their pains and frustrations, and really also work out, okay, here's maybe an area where we really need to focus on and something that maybe we didn't think about as the designers. And this phase is really crucial. And you should be using lots of different research techniques, basically as many as you can. But as I said, in the context of your hackathon, I'd thoroughly recommend you do some user interviews and also online research. And that really just enables you to validate, as I said, everything that you've assumed so far. Then, once you've got your research done, you've got a clear idea of who you're designing for, you know what their problem is, you're like, okay, well, now let's start to create ideas. No, first of all, you need to check that it's going to align with your business requirements. And what we mean here is making sure that essentially your business requirements are there to essentially make the design process a reality. So, what's your revenue stream going to be? What key partnerships on an internal and external basis do you need to make? And what resources are going to be vital to actually get your design process up and running? And this part is really important because it makes sure that before you jump into designing, you've got that business requirement and business green light, if you like, to continue, which is crucial when building new products or services. I see we have a chat. I'm just trying to open the chat, but my screen keeps freezing. Apologies. Maybe Barbara, you can help me out here. Is there a question in the chat? I can't open the chat.
Screen not visible. Daniel says he sees it. So maybe Kiran, it is from your device a problem that you can fix.
No problem. Kieran, hope you can solve it. If not, maybe log in, log back out, log out, log back in. If anyone else has problems, please speak up. Perfect. So, as I said, once you've got your user, you know who you're designing for, what the problem is, you need to check that you've got the business requirements to then actually continue to the design phase. So now we go in to the fun part, and that's the design phase. And this is where you get to ideate. And when it comes to ideation, there's so many ways that you can do this. And at Pioneers, we do this all the time. And there's some key rules we always implement when it comes to ideation and some top tips. And it's really nicely summed up on this diagram here. So when you and your team are starting to think of solutions, we'd really encourage you to think about these points and really actually use them as well. So, first of all, you should always be building on the ideas of others. What we mean by that is if your teammate puts an idea out, think to yourself, okay, what else could we do there and how can we make that even bigger and better? And that should follow through in a ripple effect with your whole team. In addition, you should always defer from judging each other. No idea is too crazy. It might seem crazy to start with, but there's always a way to come together as a team and to make it work. In addition, stay focused on the topic. That problem statement that you've finalized, you've researched, and you know is what you're trying to solve. Keep that central to the design and ideation phase. Make sure you're also failing early and often, and you'll do this a lot throughout user-centered design. You'll maybe go down a path and think it's the right one, and you'll shortly realize, okay, this was the totally wrong direction. But it's great to fail like that because then you can really focus in on other areas you know are going to be the root area of focus, and it helps you to fail fast and then focus on the most important elements. Be visual. What we mean here is, and in a digital context, I know this isn't easy, but get post-it notes. Sit with your team on your Zoom, grab some coffee, grab some tea, put your post-it notes on the table, and as a team, just start ideating. Give yourself time blocks as a team as well. So, it works really well when you maybe say, okay, team, we've got 10 minutes of silence where we're all going to just ideate. Get your post-it notes out and just start ideating. You can do it on a virtual format as well, where maybe use a whiteboard or post-it notes online or whatever. There's a really good tool actually called Miro. We'll share the link at the end of the workshop. You can use that and create a free account. It's an online virtual board, and it's a really nice way for some ideation. In addition, when it comes to ideation, make sure you're respecting each other, simple rule, one conversation at a time. The next one, think user-centric. So always, again, keep that user in mind. You know, you've done at this point so much research on your user. You really understand what's happening and what problems they're facing. So now you need to make sure you're really keeping everything you've learned about them at the core of when you're ideating. Make sure you go for quantity. So really get as many ideas out there as you can, so that as a team you can come together and really pick your favorite and the ones you think are going to meet the needs of your user best. And as I said already, no idea is too crazy. Never. I'm a strong believer that even the craziest ideas can work. You just need your team to work with you to do so. So those are some really quick, nice rules and tips for when it comes to ideation. Now you're going to be doing a lot of this over the next few days. And as you've done all your ideating and when you finish it, it's then crucial that you test your ideas on your users to make sure they're actually going to, one, like it, and two, use it. And that's where the next stage comes in. And that's called prototyping, which is a fancy word for testing. And that is essentially where you are going to be sitting with your users in some context or another and testing what you've built so far with them and checking that it's going to meet their needs. And if it doesn't, then you need to go back to the design phase and reiterate again, and then go back to the user again and check if the new iteration meets their needs. So it's that constant evolving process that I mentioned earlier, that user-centered design never is really over quickly, because you're always having to go back and make sure that everything you're doing is aligning to the user's needs. Now, this actual topic itself is going to be covered by my colleague Verena in tomorrow's workshop. So I'm not going to spend too much time here because you're going to get a full workshop on it tomorrow. And today I really want you to focus on this ideation and the problem definition phase. But here's just a really quick overview of some examples of how you can prototype and test your solutions with your users. There's things like user testing, where you sit your user down with you and you take them through the product and you check how they use it. You see where there's maybe mistakes. So like I mentioned earlier, when you go on a website for one piece of information and you can't even find it, and 10 minutes later you're screaming at your laptop, you can sit with your user and make sure that that doesn't happen. You can do things like wireframes, where it's like a 2D model of, for example, an app or a website page, and it shows the journey that your customer would maybe take through that page and what it would look like, so how you would be essentially solving their problem. You can make videos so you can show your users and get their feedback. You can make click dummies, which are essentially a cheaper way of creating a testing page, or a way to test the overall idea behind your product. And again, these are all just really nice ways for your user to actually interact with what you're doing, and then you can actually evaluate and see, are they using it the right way? Is it helping them? Is there anything that's frustrating them? Is there something that's not working? And you can then, as a team, go back to that design phase and redesign things that don't work or that need improvement, and then test again. So that's prototyping and testing, and you're going to get a very nice session on that tomorrow from Verena. Then, okay, so at this point, you've got your problem statement. You understand your user. You've started to design solutions. You've tested them. And so now it's time to implement your solution and launch it on the market. And this part is where you think, okay, the process is finished. And as I said earlier, that's the wrong mentality to have. User-centered design isn't a linear process. You need to approach the project as an entire and endless cycle of ideation, implementation, and testing. And it's common that when you're designing a product using this process, that you'll create several versions of the same screen or product, and you'll test them against each other, because you need to check which one is actually going to meet the user needs the best. And so in the end, you're actually going to be able to find a unique system that's going to work well for you and your team, but most importantly for the user. And at this point, you might also think that you might find that once you've launched it on the market, there's still going to be things that users might not be fully satisfied with. So you'll have to maybe go back to the design phase, you'll have to go back to the prototyping phase. And in addition to that, you'll have to keep up with your users' changing needs as well. So, this is a really useful technique to learn and to know. and to take with you wherever you go and whenever you're creating new solutions. You know, you can always even use it in your own personal life to work out problems in your own personal life. It's a very useful way to think things through. Maybe if you've got a hard decision to make, or you're facing some personal problems, it's also great in that respect. So it really can be used everywhere, user-centered design. And also that's what makes it so exciting and so amazing to use, especially as well when you have a tight timeline. So that's us now looked at user-centered design. Let me check how we're doing for time. Okay, we've got 20 minutes. We're going to be finished ahead of time. I like it. We're going to finish with value propositions, and then I'm going to give you some tools that you can take away with you today and start to work on as a team so that you can implement this process into finalizing your solutions ahead of your final pitches. So we're going to dive into value propositions. Again, I would like to get a consensus here of who knows value propositions. So in the chat, please write 1 if you've never heard of value propositions. Please write 10 if you know absolutely everything about them, and write any number in between based on what you know. So I'd like you to do that now. And again, I can't open my chat. I don't know what's going on with Zoom. Oh, here we go. Perfect. So we've got a 3 and 8 from Jacob, 5 from Kiran, 0, 1, perfect, 8, 5, 7, okay, nice. Real bunch of experts in here today, I love it. And I also love that everyone else in here as well is here to learn. That's super important. And okay, let's see, 7, 5, yep, okay. Perfect. So we have some people who are experts and some people who are completely new, which is no problem. Oh, I've brought up the annotation screen. Sorry, guys. Zoom is not wanting to work with me today. So again, point to make. If you're an expert here, support your team when it comes to this part of the project, and make sure you're inputting your expert knowledge and coming up with ways to really help your team excel. If you're new to this, no problem. We're going to give you a crash course right now. So, what is a value proposition? Well, a value proposition is actually an activity that is derived from the business model canvas. Now, you might have heard of the business model canvas. It's a very common canvas used when it comes to creating business models, especially when you're starting out. My colleague Eric is going to touch on this on Friday, so don't worry, you will get a full session on business modeling, but you'll understand on Friday how the value proposition comes from the business model canvas. And essentially it is a way to describe the features, the benefits and the experience of a product against the wants, needs and essentially pains of your customers. And when it comes to user-centered designs, value propositions are very useful as a quick and dirty method for essentially checking the magic fit between what you're making and why people actually buy it. So, you know, it helps you to see the overall picture and really understand where you can alleviate pains for your customer and what you actually bring to the table for your customer. And here is some 3 key points about value propositions. I'm not going to read them out because, as I said, you can all read, but let's look at why it's important. Well, there's 3 key reasons that a value proposition is important. First of all, it really allows you to precisely define your customer profiles, so you can check exactly what your customer's looking to do, what pains they're facing when they're trying to do whatever they're doing, and what needs to be done, and what gains can be basically created as a result of solving the problem for them. Then you've got to, another reason it's important is it helps you to visualize the value that you create. So it helps you to define the most important components of your offering and how you can actually support your customers and relieve their pains and actually create gains for them. And then lastly, as I already mentioned, it helps you with that product market fit. So you can always adjust your value proposition based on the research and the insights that you're gaining from your customer evidence to really make sure that you're meeting the final needs of your customer. So as you can probably tell from the terminology I'm using, it's a very great tool to understand your user needs and to constantly adapt your value proposition as you ideate and design to ensure that you're really having a product market fit out there. And again, we have a really cool tool to use when it comes to value propositions, and this is called the value proposition canvas. And again, it's just a really nice way to really get everything out on one page. And as a team, we're going to provide you with this canvas so you can use it yourselves and create a final value proposition, which is also extremely useful for your final pitches, because you can share with the jury the key pains you're going to be alleviating for your users and the key kind of gains you're going to be giving them as well. So it really helps you to show what makes you unique and what makes your solution unique. Now this canvas is has got two parts, circular part and the square part. The circular part is your customer profile. So as you can see, there's a little person in there. And what this does is it essentially outlines, first of all, the jobs that your customer is trying to do. So what is your customer trying to do, and where does your product fit in? What are their pains? So what's annoying them? You know, as I mentioned earlier with the website example, there's always things on a website that annoy you, or you're trying to solve something and you're trying to use a product or service and there's something that just doesn't work, or maybe in life there's things that are annoying you and there's a way your product can come in and solve that. And then three, what are the gains that would make your customer happy? So how can you basically meet the expectations that they have, and what would be their dream scenario? And then the square part is all about the value map. So that's about what you bring. So what's the gift that you're giving to your customers? And here you basically list the products and services that your value proposition builds on. You describe which features and products eliminate the pains of your customers, and also how they actually create gains as well. So it's really just a nice map to put everything down on one piece of paper and get a full overview of your value proposition. You need to obviously design it, then you need to test it and make sure it's correct, and make sure it follows you throughout that full user-centered design process. And you can really make sure that you achieve a fit by creating a clear connection between what matters to your customer and how your products, services, and your features actually ease their pains whilst also creating gains. So overall, it's just an amazing tool to understand your user on a deeper level and show what you bring to the table, what's your gift. And so now we've got some really nice insights, and not just user-centered design. We've got a nice insight into some tools. So we spoke earlier about the problem statement tool. We spoke about some customer interview techniques. We spoke about the value proposition. Now it's your turn to go away as a team, take these learnings and implement them into your solutions. So I've got three key things that I would like to task you all with, and I'm going to go through them now with you. First of all, I'd like you as a team to really understand your user and the problem they're facing. Now, you've all been given use cases, you've been given data, you've been given backgrounds to the challenges you're trying to solve. So now I'd like you as a team to really think about the user involved here and what their problem actually is. And I want you to use the problem statement canvas to create a final problem statement to work on as a team. This problem statement is going to guide you then through into the next process, which is all about understanding, validating your understanding of the problem. So that research piece I mentioned earlier. And in order to do that, I'd like to task you with holding 2 user interviews and also conducting online research. And what I want you to do here is to take the problem statement you've taken from step 1 and validate that it's essentially a problem your users are facing, and to then validate exactly what your users' end problems are, and ask those interview questions we shared earlier. We'll be sharing these tools with you in a second via the chat function. Barbara will also be sending them to you along with the team, so you'll have full access to all of these tools, don't worry. Then, once you've got the problem statement, you've checked and verified it with research, it's then time to start ideating and to think about your value proposition. So when it comes to ideating, that's up to you and your team how you want to do that. As I mentioned, I shared some top tips with you earlier. Set some time aside for it, get creative, and really get as many ideas out on the table as you can. Then think about the idea you like the best and start to check it with your users. Is that actually something that they would like? Is it something they would use? Would it be beneficial for them? Is it going to work? And then it's time to map out your value proposition. So again, that helps you to really understand the pains of your users, what gains they can get from actually using your product, and it helps you to really understand the market fit with the product. So we'd ask you at this point to use the value proposition canvas to really help guide you and to really map out exactly what your value proposition is. Now, I know you have a lot of time for group work today, so you should be able to use all of these tools. And when it comes to using the tools, you've obviously got an awesome team of support behind you from Pioneers. So we're all here. And if you have questions or you need support, then reach out to us. We're here to guide you and to support you. And on that note, here's my LinkedIn and also my email. So if you do need anything throughout today, just drop me an email, message me on LinkedIn. I'm always here. A lot of you have got some experts in your team already, so you should be good to go, and you should be essentially ready to start your user-centered design process. And from my side, I am excited to see what is going to be presented next week. I'll be at the pitches and I'll be rooting for all of you. From what I've heard, we have an amazing group of participants for this hackathon, and you should all be really proud and motivated, because the solutions you're going to develop are going to have a real impact and also impress a really cool jury. I mean, the jury you guys have got is unbelievable. So that's something else to really motivate you and your team. Now, I see some more questions in the chat, but again, I cannot get the chat to open. Bear with me. Here we go.
The question is value proposition versus USP from Kieran.
Good question, Kieran. I'm loving your engagement with the questions. So essentially, your value proposition enables you to outline what your USP is as well. It helps you to define your USP. The value proposition, as I mentioned, though, is all about that product market fit. So it's about understanding what problems, pains your users are facing and what gains they're looking for. So what's their dream scenario, and then how your product can actually achieve that. And a USP is obviously your unique selling proposition. So you can actually implement some of the gains that you're creating for your users in your USP, but it's also a bit more of a wider proposition as well. It can be loads of different elements, not just about the product itself, but it could also be about the service that you're giving. Maybe you give 100% customer service, or maybe your team is full of experts. It doesn't always just refer to the product itself. It's about the overall business as well, the USP. Does that help? I hope it does. So I'm going to quickly open up the chat. Any more questions, please pop them in. We finished nice 10 minutes early, and what I'm also going to do, I thought I could share the file with you on here, but I don't think I can. Barbara, are you going to be sharing the tools with everyone? Yeah?
Yes, of course. I will post it into our Discord chat.
Oh, perfect. So it's going into Discord, so I'll let you guys check out the tools there. But as I said, please get in touch with me if you have any questions. I'm here at any point to support you. I hope you enjoyed the session today. And I'd like to really wish you all luck with the next few days. It's a very exciting journey you're all going to